What's going on, guys? Scar coming at you with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we dive into the overall standard metagame breakdown from the Grand Prix finals that just happened. Actually, as I'm recording this video, it had just ended, and an Omnath Adventure deck has won the finals overall as an adventure. In this video, we're going to kind of dive into the metagame, kind of see the breakdown of the people playing Omnath and things like that, and kind of do some speculation as to what may the future be held for that particular card in general, as seeing that it was one of the most prominent cards, if not one of the most prominent decks in the overall metagame for the grand finals for this the standard mythic open. So with that being said, I mean, if we just look at the facts of how the standard metagame broke down for who was playing what decks, overall it looks like Omnath Adventures was 19%, which is about 60% of the field played Omnath. 4% people played the ramp version, and you know, there was a couple adventure style decks in there. With that being said, I mean, overall the general breakdown is Omnath was the popular card of the day. I mean, I'm not saying he's the only card that showed up a lot. I mean, you could also say that Bone Crusher Giant was one of those cards that also showed up a lot in a lot of these decks, just because it's a very solid shock removal, as well as being a decent 4/3 that has a drawback if your opponent tries to target to remove it. But that being said, I mean, Omnath showing up as, you know, 59% of the field playing the adventure style, and then if you include the Omnath ramp, which is additional 12%, you're roughly looking at almost 70% of the field playing some sort of Omnath deck. And then on top of it, I mean, you think about it, if you also think with the Teamer Adventures and then Omnath, you're thinking about that there's actually a good chunk of people playing Lucky Clover, which is another card that we're going to kind of discuss in this video today. With that being said, I think there's an issue with the way the standard metagame is broken down. There's not, you can see there's not much diversity. Majority of the people think that the Omnath deck is the best deck when it comes to best of 3 Magic. It can be said differently for the best of 1, just because you could just build a very aggressive deck. The Omnath Adventure decks and the Omnath decks in general, with the Band of Arrow, take a little bit more time, I think, to set up overall. But once the decks get going, especially even against the best of aggro matchups, it's typically game over once you start going off with your Omnath and just getting tons of mana and tons of value. But overall, I mean, the deck, like I said, is fairly interesting. You would expect a deck that has a 4-color casting card to be difficult to cast, but I think the combination of it with the ramp of the adventure style deck with the Lucky Clover allowing you to get multiple lands by paying the cost of, you know, by paying the cost of your ramp spells in that deck, just overall make it better in the sense that it just helps you just thin out your deck. Lucky Clover in general, for being a 2-mana card, is a fairly busted card, just because it lets you take advantage of these abilities and effects. You know, double casting Bone Crusher Giant Stomp effects, double casting, you know, Fey of Wishes, let me go into my sideboard and get multiple abilities. Combine that with Omnath, that every time you play a land, with it being very easy to play multiple lands on the same turn, with, you know, things like Fabled Passage, and also man, I mean, Escape of the Wild. It blinked out for a second, I apologize. But I mean, you could just see when you put so much value into one deck, it just honestly makes it seem like there's not a way to really put a stop on it. I mean, sure, you can slow them down by, you know, eliminating the cards that would allow them to go off, but the problem is there's just so many targets to do that even if the Omnath deck can't go off with like the effect of the landfall of the Omnath deck, I mean, there's so many threats in the deck, because essentially it is just the shell of Teamer Adventures that allows you to kind of like still play Teamer Adventures with this, the benefit of having Omnath. And I think the weird part is that puts it in a weird predicament. I think if you just like, if there's a ban or you know, a ban coming out soon for, you know, the standard metagame, I think you can't just stop at Omnath. I think you have to kind of look at the metagame as a whole. And I think the thing is, if you just banned Omnath by himself, you'd also then have to look at other cards that would, you know, kind of pop up. I mean, we could see before Zendikar Rising came out in the 2021 meta that Adventures actually was the deck that people are playing. And with that being said, I mean, well, I feel like what happened with the shift in meta, I think people will just fall back and play Adventures, because I mean, overall Adventures decks are yet again still very, you know, there's very card value in there because of the, you know, Lucky Clover. I think that would, you know, sure, there'd be a shift in the meta, but I think it would just go back to people either playing Teamer or Simic Adventures, and I don't think that's very good for the meta, just because it just feels, it doesn't feel fresh, it doesn't feel new. I know we did see Dimir Rogues here, but I mean, it wasn't really represented. I mean, there was only one person playing it in, you know, the overall final, but let alone, I mean, for that to be the only new deck that really has come out of, you know, Zendikar Rise, and just kind of shows that, like, I guess that the Throne of Eldraine in general was just an overall powerful set, with the ability of these adventure cards. I mean, you don't see a lot of Ikoria cards really popping up. You don't really see a lot of you know, the other sets have come out. I mean, there's some M21 cards that get mixed in there every now and then, but I mean, overall, it just feels, you know, it feels that these adventure cards kind of have put this weird effect onto the meta. I mean, it is going to be a tough decision. I mean, for, you know, Omnath Adventures to be a thing, I think it really will take, like, for something to happen to kind of shift the meta as a whole in a good way. I think it would take them to probably ban Omnath in general. I don't think Lotus Cobra would really hurt the meta if you just had it by itself, just because you're not really, other than ramping into a lot of mana, I don't think, you know, if there's not an ability that you're really trying to ramp into, I think Lotus Cobra makes a lot of mana, but it's very susceptible to spot removal. I think that's why it's a good balance. You know, 2/1 is an easy target to kind of get rid of off the board, and there's a lot of ways to spot removal in that way. And, you know, also on top of it, I feel that Lucky Clover would have to be the second card that you want to get rid of, just from the meta as a whole. Just like Cat Oven, I mean, it's just one of those cards that there really isn't a counter for it other than spot removal yet again. It's just very, very tough, because you would have to essentially, especially in a best of 1 format, I mean, best of 3, I mean, you can sideboard and get more spot removal things to kind of keep the Lucky Clover off the board. But, you know, it takes you to have to adjust your deck in order to play against the meta as a whole, if that makes sense. And I don't think that's also very good. I mean, if you're playing a best of 1, and there are a lot of people are probably going to switch to Omnath as well, as long as it's not banned in, I think, a best of 1 meta, probably shift the decks up a little bit. I'm sure someone will come out with a video, you know, tweaking an Omnath Adventure style deck for best of 1 meta. If it hasn't happened already, I think maybe, you know, some people will just make a overall best of the best Omnath style deck. And I think that's another problem, I overall think, and it's very tough in a best of 1 style of meta to play cards that are really only good against one deck and try to, you know, be good against other decks in the overall meta. It just puts a weird damper on the thing, and I think it overall puts a weird damper on the players that overall play, you know, Magic. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people who are kind of like annoyed or sick of the meta already, and, you know, we haven't even, Zendikar Horizon really hasn't even been out for like more than a month. I think we're just still underneath for about 3 weeks, I think, maybe. I feel like, and to think that the meta is already stale and we're 3 weeks into a brand new meta, I mean, that seems like a big issue. Now, I would hope that, you know, Wizards sees this and they kind of see, like, the cards that showed up a lot. You know, you could say that cards like, I think I saw an article saying that Bone Crusher Giant, for example, was another card that showed up like in 90% of the decks that had red in it, or it was in 90% of the decks that actually showed up this weekend. But I don't think it's a card that's overall broken. I just think it's a very, you know, very good card. I mean, that'd be like saying you play a blue deck and you play one particular counter spell just because it's like the best counter spell. Essentially, if you're gonna play a deck that's gonna splash red, or, you know, want some sort of spot removal, you're gonna play the best spot removal card. And I don't think like a two mana stomp ability is gonna really affect that. But if you look at the pieces that just make these cards just that much better and get that much more value without having a way to kind of like counter a Lucky Clover essentially by playing a card that really can be diverse, not just countering Lucky Clover's ability, but being able to counter other things. I think that's like the other thing. There's not a way to kind of counterbalance this deck. You know, if even the best of the best players aren't building against these decks, it's definitely tough for even the more general hobbyist players or people, you know, like me, for example, to really want to play a deck other than the best deck. I mean, it's not a very good meta, and, you know, going into you know, ranked games or even play games or whatever, and just seeing a ton of Omnath decks, it hurts like the overall health of the game in general. I mean, if you look at the value of Zendikar Rise, I think the only cards that are worth anything are really just Omnath, and when it comes to rares, I think the only thing that's worth anything is Lotus Cobra, and it just shows you, like, when they kind of weakened the cards overall power wise that came out of the set, it kind of had a whole dampen effect, because the thing is, there's still a very strong set in there. I mean, if you look at the cards that have been banned from, you know, Magic in the past like year, it looks like, you know, a lot of the cards have come out of Throne of Eldraine. And I think it sucks to have to ban a card that's so new, and I'm sure there's people that could be disappointed that maybe they picked up their set of copies of Omnath because it's a good card and they built the deck around it, but then to have it banned like a couple weeks after they've already purchased copies of it kind of sucks. But I mean, that's one of those things, if it's overall going to help the benefit of the whole standard meta, I think it's just one of those benefits. I mean, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Overall, what you think of the whole standard meta that's happening right now in MTG as a whole. It doesn't have to be arena. It could also be in your local game store, or just in general from whatever you play in Magic. If it's something that do you think Omnath is a big problem? I mean, it's just one of those things when you look at data that shows that even the best of the best players are playing Omnath style decks because it's the best deck, one of the best decks out there. It's one of those things that it seems very, very obvious. And I mean, when Oko was in the same situation, I mean, it didn't take long for Oko to get banned, and I honestly feel like it's pretty soon that Omnath is gonna get banned. Omnath is gonna get banned. So let me know if you think so. If not, let me know. Let me know if there's something that you would what they think you should do if it's not banning Omnath. What do you think they could do to kind of like help the meta as a whole? If you like the video, guys, hit that like button. If you want to know I post more videos, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next video.